centered here because I don't know. I want to move this way, but wait a minute. No, that's not right. So
Yeah.
All right.
Hey guys, welcome to Keystroke Medium, the show for readers, writers, and everyone in between. I'm here live with Bill Frisbee, William S Frisbee Jr. If you want to search him on Amazon, that's what you search for it. And we're here today to just talk about writing, talk about what inspires him. We're going to talk a little bit about his military past and how that informs his writing, and maybe a little bit about Christmas and 2020. So welcome, and hey, Bill, nice to see you.
Hey, nice to see you too. Great to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. We've been looking at the chat. Oh, and by the way, chat, just click on private chat on the side, Bill, and then you can see what everyone's been saying. We already have like 5 people saying hi, including Justin Sloan, Kayleen, Dean, Jim.
Oh, wow.
Gamer.
Such interesting names. Hey, Scott.
And
Kayleen.
Scott.
Dean, how's it going, guys?
Anyway, so hello to everyone. Welcome. Bill, so you're at your father-in-law's house right now?
Yep. So Friday was traveled north, visit the father-in-law, and so I'm there now.
Yeah, and then do you have any big plans for 2020, particularly any big writing plans?
Oh, yeah. I've got a lot of books on the back burner. I plan on putting out several of them. So
what are you working on right now?
Well, right this minute, actually, I'm working on Ghost of the Republic. That's a story that I've been sitting on the back burner, and Kayleen actually edited it for me. So I'm going back through and fixing things.
And then who's Kayleen for our audience who hasn't yet experienced the writer's journey? All
right. Well, Kayleen is an awesome editor, and she's also a writer, and we're also co-writing a job called My Little Hoorah, which is military sci-fi. So she's a great lady.
What is this My Little Hoorah story about?
Well, I'll let her have most of the fire there. But it's military science fiction. Mm-hmm. And the premise is, I don't know how well I could say it, but it revolves around My Little Pony in space with Space Marines. So it's I can't turn in my man card for that one. It's actually pretty good. So it's going to be a very interesting series.
I hear the My Little Pony part is very subtle, extremely very subtle.
Very, yeah. I mean, you won't be able to put the two side by side and compare them.
Now you're kind of like the military science fiction guy because you wrote the book on it.
Yes, I've written one book on writing military science fiction. I think it's doing pretty good. I've been doing military science fiction for a long time. I've read it since the 70s or 80s. I think one of the first books I read was Battlestar Galactica in the paperback. And then I went into the Marine Corps. I've always been something of a militant with Army JROTC, and so I went in the Marine Corps, and then I got the real knowledge on what the military is like. And since then, it's like I'll look at a book and it's like, no. So my book is there to help other people figure out, does this make sense or does this not? Because I get sick and tired of reading very bad, poorly written military science fiction. I want to learn stuff, and that's just me. I've got a website for it. It's been around since the 90s.
So you're a military science fiction reader. You've lived it, and now you're writing it too. How long have you been writing military science fiction?
Writing probably since the 90s. My military science fiction. When I was 8, I wrote my first little book. I wrote it on paper, and then I put cardboard, and I made a book out of it. So I've been off and on since then. So,
and what's kind of like makes you love military science fiction? What inspires
conflict? The people. It's all about people. War is some of the most intense emotional and physical stress that a person can be under. And you really learn a lot about people by that stress. So that's kind of what fascinates me about military science fiction and war, is just seeing how people interact. You
see like their true sides come out.
Exactly.
It's probably not just during the stressful situations, but also when the pressure kind of is released and it's off, and then you're kind of relaxed, and in both of those circumstances, you get to see who the real person is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conflict in that. There's no easy choices. I mean, it's like, it sounds simple. Okay, I'm going to shoot the bad guy. Well, he's not a bad guy to his family, So it's about people and how you deal with that. Deal with the different aspects of, there's no easy choices.
That's probably something that soldiers see and feel and experience on a deeper level than most people are. Now, I've never been there, but I've read it and I can imagine it, but it's different when you're actually there, I'm sure. So what is it that some military science fiction authors not get wrong, but need to understand?
Nothing's ever black and white. A lot of it's different shades of gray. And I think what a lot of military science fiction writers get wrong is mostly the technology and the mentality. They like to talk about, this new shiny gun does all this stuff, but the story's not about weapons or equipment or spaceships. It should be about people. And that, I think, is, besides the actual tactics and techniques, don't get me started on Star Wars. A lot of people get the tactics and techniques wrong. You don't stand up in the middle of nowhere and just start shooting at somebody unless you want to get shot.
Right.
You have to get down, take cover. And oddly enough, when you take cover, the enemy might not be able to see you well, but you can't always see the enemy that well either. And so people miss out on things like that. They think, oh yeah, you've got a perfect line of sight. No. It's like, you'll see the movies, you've got a sniper, he has this whole big field in front of him. No. Usually he's back a little bit and he's looking out through this small little hole.
Right.
So it's like, just things like that. Anything I can do to help people, understand that the movies get it wrong more often than not.
Yeah. I had a Krav Maga instructor, and he said that the police officers had to go out and retrain all the police officers back in, I think, the 1950s. Because someone was holding their gun wrong. They were all holding it up to their head, right? Because they saw that in the movies. Because just like this, a camera screen can only catch that much. If you want to show the gun, it's like right up here. But if you're going to shoot a gun right next to your ear, that's a bad choice.
Or if they hold it up like that, it's going to take an eye out.
Right?
Just amazing.
So that kind of thing, like if I was writing military science fiction, I wouldn't know just because I hadn't been there.
Yeah, there's so much, but anything I can do to help other people pick up on that. I mean,
right.
One of my big pet peeves is finger on the trigger. You can always tell if someone's posing for the camera, if they know anything about firearms, where that finger is.
Right.
So it drives me crazy whenever I see a cover and they've got the finger on the trigger and they're pointing at the ceiling, and it's like, you're going to shoot the ceiling.
Yeah, or get your finger broken if someone tries to take that gun.
Yeah. So
you wrote the book on it to help authors just to get a little more realism, I suppose, in their military science fiction.
And help them understand, when a platoon attacks, when a squad attacks, it's not just a bunch of guys like in Star Wars. They all stand up, start shooting at each other and running at each other. I mean, there's actual tactics involved. What does it mean to flank? What does it mean to, hit someone from the blind side? Why is flanking so effective? And I've got like a list. How do you keep from getting shot? That's a big thing, but you see a lot of the movies, guys out there, he's standing, he's out in the middle of nowhere. He's going to get shot, so a lot of it's just basic stuff like that.
Do you ever look over that book again to come up with plot ideas?
Yeah.
I'm stuck in the middle of the battle scene. Read, go through the list, and oh, hey, that gives me a really great idea.
Yeah, I keep it right by my desk. I have a couple copies, and there's like some lists on, I know there's a section on there on missions gone bad, possible missions. So sometimes I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? Oh yeah, let's go look over here. So I've got that pre-built list that I use.
That's awesome.
And then I'll use it for ranks and all that. And I've gotten I'm trying to diversify. Everybody knows American ranks, American military and stuff like that. I mean, just movies and books are full of that. So I've been trying to diversify a little bit and get involved in more militaries and get them more integrated. So it's a process.
All right. So top 3 things that you love in a good military science fiction story.
Good people, action, and probably no black and white, because war and conflict is not black and white. So I guess those are 3 things.
When you say good people, do you mean that they are good, like good moral fiber, or they're like, self-sacrificial, they've got a moral compass, or do you mean they're like well-rounded characters, like
well-rounded, 3-dimensional?
That you can
So they're people in a bad situation. They have to make the best of it. They might make good decisions. They might make bad decisions. If they make all good decisions, they're not really people. People don't make all good decisions. People make bad decisions, sometimes for the best reasons. So it's a lot of ambiguous mentality there.
All right. So you said good people, and no black and white. That was the last one. What was the middle one?
The middle one was action.
Action. Okay.
Yeah.
So what makes good action for military science fiction?
Conflict, people going at it, just things move along, things I can understand and make sense to me. People walking across the street, no. People just shooting at each other, no. But, when, rounds are knocking, wood chips off things and splintering stuff, I mean, that's a lot better.
Right. So you're bringing in different senses, whether it's sound or feeling or even smell, like wood chip, maybe smell. And
the burning, what I don't like to get into the gore, but what does a bullet wound do? What does a laser do? There's a big difference there.
Right.
A lot of people, okay, I'm going to take cover behind the table. Most bullets go through tables, unless they're big, thick, heavy tables.
Right.
I'm going to hide behind that couch. No, you're not. Not a second time at any rate. So, I think action is, when they're doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. With action, we have Brian Mansouri saying, flashy, bang, bang, boom, boom. Engage the senses. With good action scenes, I'm looking for multiple things affecting the plot at the same time. Right. It could be, different ships, the explosions and stuff, but it's also, there's character conflict. In the middle of a battle, there's so many things that can affect you. And are the characters thinking of clever ways to defeat the enemy, like a way I hadn't thought of, a way that's not textbook, I love that kind of stuff. How do you think of good plot twists? I
love plot twists.
Okay.
I think if the book doesn't have a plot twist, they need plot twists. They need something, because otherwise, some people like a book that, okay, I understand how this is going to progress. That's okay. But I like that twist. I like the things where things don't go as you expect.
Right.
I know some people like it where it's, plotted. I expected that. No, I like that surprise. Then I can go back and read it and go, ooh, there's something else.
Yeah. How do you come up with them? Do you bounce ideas off of like your writing partner, or do you go for a walk and think about it, or do you just kind of like let it brew for a few days?
All the above. And plus I listen to music, and then I'll listen to music. I think that's a pretty cool song. That really is. I wonder what the story is behind it. Oh, there isn't one. Well, gosh, maybe I should write one.
Yeah.
So it's like that's one way. And then plus I'll be reading another book and it's like, well, I don't like the way they did that. I could do it a lot better. So that'll give me ideas, just reading other books.
Right.
Or I watch very little TV. But, there's all sorts of different sources.
Like Star Wars. You mentioned Star Wars earlier. Star Wars, one of the ones that you're like, hey, that was pretty good, but I think I can twist that more.
I don't want to get into that holy war, but I haven't seen the latest Star Wars movie. I love The Mandalorian.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
But I just haven't seen the latest one. It's just, I was a big Star Wars fanatic when I was knee high to a grasshopper, and now it's just like, okay.
All right, we've got the peanut gallery piping up. Brian Mansour says, plot twist, the army guy saves the Marine guy. And super plot twist, the Air Force guy saves the Army and the Marine guy. Ooh.
Yeah, that would be a big plot twist.
Rick Partlow, the Air Force guy often saves the Marines.
I think more often than not, it's the Navy pilots. But
Rick says air support from the Air Force.
Yeah, air support.
We all.
Yeah.
All right, a big question I get a lot, I see a lot on the Keystroke group is, what are the major tropes for military science fiction? So I guess, what are the tropes that you look for when you're reading a book and that you're kind of sure to put into your book when you're writing it?
I guess the tropes, you could look at the technology. I love powered armor.
Mm-hmm.
I love energy weapons, although they're not entirely practical. But spaceships and stuff like that, there are a lot of tropes, space assault, 20 minutes later, you're from the ship in orbit down on the planet. Okay. Those are common tropes. Tropes I look for that I enjoy, mostly powered armor, energy weapons, and realistic technology in the grand scheme of things.
Where do you get your tech ideas from?
The news.
Really?
Yeah. So I like to see what DARPA is up to. They
Right.
always have some very interesting things. Just a bunch of other sites that I'll look around. I can't think of any right now, but I like to see what other nations are doing. Like Russia put out a very interesting little, there's some problems with it, but like a robotic tank. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just fascinating to see another country, not American, come up with a technology using the Americans as bad guys.
Yeah.
What's their thought process? How do they see us? Mm-hmm. And they have, I find it fascinating with YouTube when they have videos on stuff like that, like robotic drones, and, technology is moving very, very quickly.
Right. It's almost like a race to see who can get the craziest, cruelest technology. And then also, how would you defend against it in your book? Yeah. So that's usually a big thing. I mean, drones are becoming more and more common. I mean, for Christmas, I just got a little handheld drone. It's $20-$30. I mean, they're getting very cheap. When you get a 3D printer and you're starting to print out hundreds or maybe thousands of them, I mean, then it starts to become a problem. If you go a step further, ISIS is already using drones against U.S. troops. They're putting a little hand grenade on the drone, they're flying it. That's all it takes.
So it's there. The technology is there. And they've got all sorts of weapons to block drones and take them out. There's all sorts of defenses. So it's a war that most authors don't really address, drones, robots and things like that. They're really becoming very common.
So where do you think warfare is headed in the next 10, 20 years?
Oh, I have no idea. I think it's going to be a combination of all the above. I mean, you can have drones, you can have regular ground troops.
Yeah.
I think realistically what it boils down to is when you have standoff weapons, artillery, drone strikes and stuff like that, you'll have to put someone that can find a target. If you can find a target, you can kill it. You've got missiles for that. You've got drones for that. If you can see it, you can kill it. You've got artillery that can fire, many kilometers. Again, if you can find it, you can kill it. And that's a big thing. And then plus, warfare is starting to move into cities as well. It's no longer jungle warfare like in Vietnam. It's a lot of city warfare like Fallujah or the city of Hue and things like that. So how do you fight a war and kill the enemy without killing all the civilians that are there too?
Yeah, isn't that the idea of drones, to make the civilian casualties a lot less?
Yeah, if you care about civilian casualties. If you don't, you put grenades on drones and fly them around.
Right.
So there's just so much going on, and how do you defend against drones? it's starting to become a big thing. And then how do you defend against enemy drones and keep your drones? It's getting interesting.
Right. So you can kind of see we're in the future going to be drones on drones sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which would take a lot of the life and death element out, maybe.
Yeah, you'll have people that have drones, people that don't have drones. So you have
Right.
that. But then when you start to look at major superpowers like China, Iran, they have their own drone programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to have you're facing drone wars. I mean, Iran managed to kind of hack one of our drones and crash it in their country, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got that drone technology. They had a Predator.
Yeah.
So they can build that. And then there are people, how do we hack American drones? America sets the standard. If you've ever seen, they have drone racing in Dubai, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you have kids with little VR, headsets on, and they're racing drones around the stadium. And you step back, how can you militarize that?
Oh my goodness.
So it's like, you put like a little explosive on there. And then there's another video on YouTube. The guy has a little handheld drone, and it's got a little small charge of explosives on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses it to hit someone in the forehead and just blows the hole right through.
Wow.
So it's like, now what he was doing in that video is not quite here, but you make something like that with those kids with the VR headsets on, flying the drones around, and things can get pretty interesting.
Right. Yeah. Like I've heard of U.S. troops in the Middle East getting hit by rocks, little kids with rocks, and you just got to ignore the little kids with rocks. You can't just, shoot every little kid with a rock in his hand. But if the rock is a remote.
Yeah. And you can't, it's getting harder. It really is.
Right. But all these things are readers. What do you think as far as plots go? Are readers interested in reading about drone wars, which sounds like what we're realistically in? Yeah. I haven't read any books like that. They're all human characters.
Yeah. And that's the way to go, actually. When you're talking about writing versus real world. But then you got to take a step back. And as I recall, the drone operators in Las Vegas were getting some kind of award that you usually get in the combat zone, and they were suffering from PTSD. So when you think about that, and I'm not going to say being a drone operator is like horribly easy. I mean, there are some aspects. If you're going to launch a missile, you're going to take a missile and you're going to put it in a car. Yeah, the enemy might have been in there, but so was his kids. So there's aspects there. We've got the drones, but that's not key. That shouldn't be key to the story.
Yeah,
that might be a side part, but really, story should be about people and how they deal with this emerging technology.
Yeah, we had a Facebook user said, now we're talking about near future, not so much military science fiction. That's a good point. It might be a separate genre. But military science fiction in general is speculative. It's got that speculative aspect.
Yeah, you guys see what's going on now in order to understand where it can go.
So you pull from it. It might give you an idea that you might want to run with. But in general, you keep your military science fiction book in a world that military science fiction readers recognize.
Yes. So, as an example, I mean, we've got the Marine Corps is experimenting with robotic mules to carry stuff. Right? So in a lot of my stories, it's still about people. They might have robotic mules that not just carry backpacks, but also carry mortar rounds or might have mounted mortar rounds. So just building on the technology we have today, inserting it in that futuristic scenario, and then coming up with, well, why don't they have entire robotic armies like that?
Right. Wow.
So, there's a lot that can go on. Why not have robotic armies? Well, because they can be jammed, they can be hacked, they can be turned on the owners. So there's a lot of, give and take. Understand where it's going now, and then, it might change, and we might go back to, shooting rifles at each other, but still there needs to be that progression. You can't say, oh, well, I don't like drones, so I'm not going to have anything to do with them. They're here, know. And one science fiction author, Hamilton, Peter F. Hamilton, Years ago, he put out a book, and I forgot, The Reality Dysfunction.
Mhm.
And I was really impressed in the way that he had his ships, but instead of fighters launching off of those ships, he had drones that launched off those ships. So the drones were the actual fighters for that ship. Which makes a lot of sense in space, because a manned fighter cannot do some of the acrobatics that would be needed to stay alive.
Mhm. Have you thought about writing about a world where the AI is kind of taken over?
Yes. Yeah. Most of my, and I won't go into details on that one. Kayleen knows, but
Yeah.
Most of my writing has, except for the books that are out, they involve AI in some way. AI, it's coming. Whether or not, how that's going to impact our culture and our society, that's a big question. Most of my books revolve around, AI came, we saw it was bad, we outlawed it.
Right.
Which doesn't necessarily mean it's gone.
Right.
But so there's always different aspects.
It's like in the box, but it wants to break out.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you defend against AI?
Probably a couple ways. One, AIs, you can't let them go too crazy. It's a computer. It's in a box. If it wants to make itself mobile, that might not be necessarily easy. But, AIs are electronics. You've got HERF, you've got EMP. You've got ways of dealing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a challenge. Okay, well, the AI started to gain control. How did mankind stop it?
Mm-hmm.
Pull the power most commonly, but it's never that simple. So,
all right, we've got a pretty lively chat now, guys. We missed out on the writer's journey last night, so now's your chance. If you have any questions for Bill, go ahead and ask them in the chat. If you have any topics you want to throw at us, go for it. We've got one right off the bat. Tom's asking, AI will change our lives for the good, for the bad. We'll see. So I'll just throw that one to you. What do you think?
I think it will be good and bad.
Okay.
When you look at history, how many elevator operators exist now?
Okay.
How many people in there stand in the elevator and push the buttons for you?
Maybe
none. Yeah. So it's going to be good in that it helps and it can develop things. And one example of AI is the salt. Winter's here, and in the morning, they have to go to the big salt plant and get salt out of there to salt the roads. All right. Now, here was an example of AI. I'm a computer consultant. Mm-hmm. So I tend to deal with things like this. But one example of AI that was kind of interesting is they said, okay, well, they have an AI hooked up to a camera, and that camera watches the piles of salt inside this building. Okay. So that AI watches and says, okay, well, 2 trucks came in, it picked it up. I estimate we're going to have 5 more trucks. I need to order some more salt. So that's an example of AI. Artificial intelligence. It's not a person there, kind of like with a calculator trying to figure, okay, yeah, we need more. It's an AI that's doing that. But then the AI in this situation is watching multiple locations around and taking that information and then passing it on, saying, okay, we need to order more salt and stuff like that. That's one example of AI. So in that, it's good. But on the flip side, you can get an AI that says, I need to make paper clips. Here's how I make them. That's my job. Anybody that interferes with my ability to make paper clips gets exterminated. So, you'll get a lot of paper clips. You don't have to put a lot of effort into it, but then it could go a little bit bad.
Right. How do you make a moral AI? Do you want a moral AI? Is that trouble?
Well, you definitely do, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. There's a lot of other challenges and stuff like that. And I see Rick says 100% we'll never get a truly sentient AI. I think we could get an AI that's good enough to fool you. And you have to define what sentience is. So it's kind of, it's a challenge.
Understanding time,
mm-hmm.
having awareness of time and awareness of self and others.
Yeah. But you can program that stuff. I mean, you could say, if you hit the side of this box, that's me, that hurts. I want to do something about it. That's a simple program. if then that. So it all boils down. I think sentient AI is going to require two things. It's going to require computers that can learn and computers that can forget. And I could probably go on for a while on this. And I think being able to forget is a key aspect of sentience and learning.
Can you explain that?
Okay. So we as human beings, all right, and it's different for computers because they have a database. They say, okay, here's how I do that. And if it's not in the database, then they try to figure it out. Okay. Whereas human beings, our database is in our head and we have to say, okay, how do we do this? I forgot. I'm going to have to figure it out again. All right. Whereas a computer will say, okay, it's not my database. Let me check and start trying to do this. But for a human, it's a lot faster process. It's like, I forgot, I'm going to figure out how to do this. But a computer has to spend time and say, okay, this exact situation is not my database. Is there a similar situation? No, there's not. So I need to start cycling through my database to figure out what's a similar situation. So it has to do all these, if and then functions to figure out, well, how do I handle this?
Right.
And I think being able to forget, your memory's not perfect. So it's like, well, I'm not going to spend time remembering this because I can figure it out. And then when you figure it out, you say, oh, well, maybe I did it a different way last time, but this time I'm just used to figuring it out and stuff like that. And I kind of do that in my job a lot. I deal with IT, computer systems, and all sorts of software and stuff like that. And there's no way I'm going to remember everything about all these different technologies and stuff like that. But then I could sit down and I can see a couple common parameters and figure out, okay, this is how the software works. This is what it does. These are my expectations. The computer presented with that much data is going to say, if this, then that. Well, that doesn't apply here. And it just has to spend a lot of processing time trying to figure out. So it's kind of, I'd have to find an article, but I think forgetting is a key aspect of gaining sentience and learning.
Wow. I never thought of forgetfulness as a positive. Usually I think of it kind of as a negative that I got to work on the older I get. Don't be like that. But you're saying it helps you to figure out, to let go of a failure and try something different.
Yeah. I mean, it's like,
the computer program can't let go of that failure. It just keeps on trying and trying and trying again and again instead of looking for a new track.
Right.
Now, Thomas, he asks, what if a human merges with AI? And I saw a Joe Rogan interview with Elon Musk, and that was one of Elon's big concerns for the future, is that human and AI merging is around the corner, and that will in part strip our humanity. I don't want to speak for him. You have to go look it up yourself.
Well, let's take a step back too and look at Google. What do we do before Google?
Libraries.
What?
Libraries, talking to people.
Yeah. But if you wanted to, you've got Google Maps. Google is information at our fingertips. All right. I use Google all the time. But before I used Google, it was like, I had to think about how to go get that. If directions, a GPS. These days I just plug it into my GPS and go. Back then it was like, well, what's your street address? Then I have to find it in this big massive tome of, a big phone book to get the address, and then I have to find it on the map. And it wasn't simple. And I think that's what integration between AI and the human mind is going to give us, is more instantaneous, look up information. In that regard, it might help. I don't think it'll make us smarter. It'll let us look up facts more quickly. And they will appear smarter. But then that also depends on the facts we look up. There's a lot of fake news floating around out there, and if you look up the wrong things, you're wrong.
Right.
So
I guess the whole learning process would look different too. Like classrooms and schoolrooms learning would look different, because like math class.
Yeah. Math is not my thing.
math, what I need to be in class. Forcing yourself through math equations also teaches you another kind of learning, another way kind of looking at the world that you just don't get if I get to read the fantasy books that I want to read all day, which is what I would have been doing at 11 years old if I had the choice.
Yeah. Well, Ben Steven kind of also brings up a very good point on the Facebook, and it's like, filtered information at our fingertips. Yeah, we've got a lot of that information at our fingertips, but who does the filtering? So that's kind of the gatekeepers. Yeah, it's all about the gatekeepers. And I think that's going to be one flaw moving forward, is that we have this information that's being filtered to us and fed to us in a certain way. So we're not used to going out and finding our own answers. So if the answer isn't there, we'll just okay, whatever, and move on. So we're not, I think that's also a problem of Google, is it helps us, it gives us the options and ideas, but we can't depend on it. And if we integrate AI with our brains, we might start depending on it.
Right.
And who gives us the information? Who programs that AI? So I think there are a lot of possible, problems there.
Does that interest you for your characters?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And one series I've got, it's actually my conglomerate series. There's an evil empire. Basically, they use Facebook to manipulate and control. It's not Facebook, but it's like social media, and it's just, I explore that aspect because that's one of the things is, okay, they're going to control human interaction. And these days, a lot of human interaction is going on Facebook and things like that.
Yeah.
And when you tie that in with phone calls, what people buy, like China and their Sesame credit, if you looked into that, they evaluate citizens on, are you a good citizen? Well, if you're buying Japanese anime, that doesn't make you a good citizen. You lose points. If you're buying work boots, yes, you're a good, responsible citizen. You gain points. If you don't have so many points, you can't fly in all plane.
Right.
So then that's going to force people to do certain things.
To make different choices. It's like, it just, wasn't that the word that they're using, nudge?
Yeah. Also social engineering. Because social engineering is also when, if you have a friend who has a very low score, their score affects your score. So you'll kind of sever ties with those rebels and stuff like that.
Your score affects your children's score. So, that's a really powerful nudge for parents.
Yeah. And that's a use of AI right there too. There's I don't know how many, but I know that there was a school in China where they have cameras in there and they're watching the children, the students, and saying they're happy, they're not happy. And that, if they're not happy, then they're told not to come to school, or maybe that's work. In the workplace, they have cameras and say, okay, well, this person isn't happy. They need to go home.
Wow.
So it's really interesting the way and directions they're taking it. It's really scary too.
But we don't even have to look at, another country for nudges. We have them plenty right here. Yeah.
But it's also, we don't need to get caught in that trap. Certain laws influence the way we do and say things too. It's like, I see that in IT with information. In Europe, they have very strict privacy laws that say you can't have this much information or you have it this way. Whereas China is kind of the opposite. If there's a company in China, they're doing business. If there's an American company in China doing business in China, the Chinese government has to have access to their network in China so they can see what's coming out of China into the American network.
Wow.
So it's interesting, in European Union, they've got more privacy laws that you can only keep so much information and this is how you do it. So there's a lot of limitations and stuff like that. And those laws will impact further on the technology that's developed. So it's really fascinating to see what other countries are doing and how they're using that technology.
And does that give you ideas for your stories?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Brian, he says there's a YA book about that, although I'm not sure which book.
There's a show, Black Mirror, that covers some of that stuff. Yeah.
It does. Right. Each episode, focuses on one key aspect of technology and kind of spins it into the future.
And it takes it right to the edge and beyond.
Right. Do you try to do that with your plots and your setting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to get people to think. It's like, well, what happens when I take bad guys? I call them bad guys, but they're people. They've got a goal. They some of them, they mean well. And the Chinese government technically means well when they put those laws and rules in place. And Sesame credit, they want good citizens who are going to be valuable members of society.
Right.
And that doesn't make them bad.
Lower crime, make everyone safer. It's true.
So, but it can go wrong so easily too.
So in the story that you wrote for Farthest Reach, you have two main civilizations who are kind of at the last gasp of their civilization. Where did you get the idea for that story? Did it come from the news? Did it come from?
Well, the story itself came from a song.
Okay.
All right. Psychic Wars by Heavy Metal. So if you read the story, you have to listen to the song. I'd have to pull up the lyrics, but some of the lyrics are in there, and it's just the song is about an individual. He's been in all these psychic wars. He's just torn down and thoroughly destroyed. His armor's gone, his weapons. He's mentally drained. And that gave me the root for this story. But then by the same token, there's a deeper, I think, message in that story, and that life is about conflict. All right. You have to fight for your next breath. You have to do something to be fed. Nothing's free. Life is conflict. You're always going to compete with other people for resources, for food, things like that. And I don't think a lot of people really understand that. Oh, why do you kill those deer? Can't you go to the store and, get some beef or something? It comes from somewhere. But life is conflict. You're always, when you stop learning, when you stop trying to do better, it's over. And that's a key aspect is, our children have to understand that life is a fight for survival. It doesn't mean you have to be cruel and evil and, kick people in the face and stuff like that. But it does mean that things are going to be handed to you on a silver platter. And for the children it's a story about, two cultures. They just have differences, and you're going to have that in the real world. People they're not going to get along. What do you do about that? And as the story progresses, the main character, he has to look back, and he starts to realize that, that life, people aren't going to get along, and you either have to accept that or make a decision. And in the end, he makes a decision. It's like, we can keep going on like this, but is there an alternative? And that, I hope, is like, what is the alternative? Is there an alternative?
Yeah.
Or are we caught in a loop?
Yeah. I definitely got that from the story. I thought that story was a thinker. That story later on, I found myself thinking about. And I put it at the end because I felt at the end of the story, maybe I was reading into it, but I kind of felt like the main character was looking back to Earth in a way, like looking back at the Reaper. So that's why I was like, I have to put it at the end because I feel like the story brings all of the plots, kind of right back to the Reaper reading the book right now.
Yeah, I didn't think it pointed to Earth, but it was like, when people look up at the stars and they see something, when they see a star blink out, what is that?
What is that?
But now people can look up at the stars and they see that star blink out, like, well, what did I just see?
Right.
When a star disappears from the night sky, or if it was there very briefly.
Yeah. I saw an article recently, 100 stars disappeared.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know. I see articles like that every so often, and aliens, could be, or it could be something big moved in the way or something like that.
Right.
and stars fascinate me the way we're not static. We're not sitting, just moving slowly around the galaxy. We're actually shooting at, hundreds of kilometers an hour through space and all the planets. There's this diagram. I just love looking at this. And it shows the system going like that with all the stars rotating and just right through there. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
So many people miss that. It's like, it has so many other ramifications too. When you think about it, it's like, okay, if you're going to travel from star 1 to star 2, well, the star 2 that you're looking at, yeah, that might be 7 light years away. That means that's what you're seeing right now is 7 years in the past. Which direction is that star moving? So it's like if you're flying to it, you have to start curving to go to where it's at. If you're going to look at, go off what you see, because that star is 7 years ago, and it's moved in that 7 years. Right. But it's not, like 5-10 kilometers. I mean, we're talking quite a distance.
Wow.
So it's like, when we take that into effect, it's like calculations and traveling through space becomes so much more complicated.
So do you include that in your plot, or you just skip over it like hand wavium?
I try to include that in my plot, and there's some cases I use it as a time travel device. All right. So it's not really time travel, but then you see that star as it was 7 years ago. Right. All right. But as you get closer, you'll see it as it was a week ago. Now, if you have a camera and a zoom lens, you're seeing what happened 7 weeks ago. If you see a planet explode, well, that happened 7 weeks ago. So as you get closer, things become more real time. But it's like our sun is 8 minutes away from our planet. So you look at that light is 8 minutes old. That's where the sun was 8 minutes ago.
Wow.
So, when you start to think about that, and, it's still coming to you. If you were to be there, it's, as you get closer, you'll see what's happening. So someone flashes the light and says SOS, for instance, from a planet, and you're looking at that 2 weeks ago. As you get closer, whatever was happening 2 weeks ago, oops, oh well.
Wow.
And that can be a very interesting plot aspect if you actually say, okay, I want to know what happened here. They were attacked. How were they attacked? So I'm going to go back, a week, which if the attack was a week ago, I'm going to go back a week, and I'm going to watch how the enemy attacked the system. Because I'll be able to focus in. I'll see, how everything happened.
Wow. That's cool.
So science is pretty interesting, and, it can be interesting.
All right, I know Kayleen's watching. I'm kind of wondering if Kayleen's saying, yeah, this makes her face trying to think it all. She says so much math. Yeah. Kaylene, I think I agree with you. I would let Bill handle that with the plot, and then I'll handle the characters.
Well, I'm terrible with math, really. But you can take big aspects and say, okay, it was a week ago, and you can kind of see what's going on. Another kind of big thing that kind of messes with my mind when I'm thinking about time travel, and you've got, FTL, faster than light, or warp travel. I like to use wormholes and stuff. So you've got planet A and planet B. Well, star system B has already moved 7 years from where you expect it to be. When you jump out, when you go through your wormhole, you have to know exactly where it's going. So you have to watch it and say, okay, it's moving this far, this fast, doing all this. So you have to get close. All right. Sounds pretty simple. But then that solar system has a velocity. So it is shooting through space. So it's all fine and dandy. You jump in there. But if you don't meet that velocity, if you don't meet it, you get left behind.
Huh.
So it's...
And then could you accidentally get flung into a planet?
Yeah. But then by the same token, if you look at space is so incredibly vast.
Right.
But theoretically you could... But when you look at space, I mean, there's just...
Chances are slim.
Yeah.
Because of how big it is. But you could slam right through a planet, yeah.
Yeah. You could come to a stop in front, and then, boom, here comes the planet. Game over.
Wow.
Which complicates things.
Yeah. We had another question from the audience. They asked about your writing process? I think like your daily schedule. It's wild.
Usually I try to get up early and
Mhm.
start. Sometimes I'll get up at like 5 a.m. and write to about 6:30. Sometimes I'll write at lunch, stuff like that. And then if I'm having a hard time writing, I'll try to edit. So I've got all sorts of books and stuff like that aren't published, so I can go back and I'll just pick one at random and concentrate on a scene. I'm a big fan of Scrivener because it.
Are you still alive? Oh, I think we lost Phil. No, not Phil. Phil, try coming back. Let's see. That work? Does that work? No, it's not working. Oh no, we've lost Phil. Well, it's just me, guys. Me and Kayleen. And Thomas. Thomas says The Expanse does a great job at the differences in experiences, especially later books. That is true. He froze. I know, Kayleen, he froze. Now it's just me and the coffee pot. And the dolls. Those are actual dolls. I guess they're collectibles. They're my Nana's. Ben says the look on his frozen face. Yeah. Yeah, someone could make memes with that. I'm sure. Wait, doesn't Bill make memes with that? He makes memes with the people on the show. Ryan says traveling through hyperspace ain't like dusting crops. No, not to ask my brother about crop dusting. He knows a lot about that. And Ben says, how come you don't see me? I don't know, Ben. You gotta log in through Facebook or something. If you're a Facebook user, you log in through Facebook, and then it allows your name to pop up. And before you do that, it doesn't show your name. It looks like you have done that now. Let's see. I'm going to go check my Facebook Messenger to see if Bill is there saying, hey. No, he's not. Oh, no, well, we've lost Bill. And let me check to see what he wants to do. Okay, you guys just hold on. You there? With that? Should I say that? Are you there? You might have lost him. All right, well, we'll sign off. We'll sign off for the day. It was a good show. I loved all the AI talk and the speculative discussion about weapons and what the future looks like in terms of AI and warfare, and also learning education. I love all these kinds of ideas. And thanks everyone for hanging out in the chat. This was a lot of fun. Happy New Year to everyone, to you authors out there, to you readers out there. I'm excited to see authors in the community talk about what their New Year's goals are. I know we're going to have another New Year's show on Monday night, so I'd love to hear about your goals, and I'm hoping that we can all encourage each other to accomplish them in 2020. And Kayleen says she's doing research. Yeah, so research, writing goals, any of that. I'm excited to see that happen in 2020. So if you are just a podcast listener, join on our Facebook group, and we'd love to hear from you and see you meet your goals in the next coming months. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.